Hello, this is Defacto Review for this week. I'm with me, Jargal Saikhan. We will share with you about 3 events of last week that are shaping the economic, political, social life of Mongolians. This week the topics are: economic growth will be just 1% for 2022, as IMF mission states. Second, digital signature is in as a part of Digital Nation program. The third topic would be World Press Freedom Index of Mongolia diving. About the economic growth of Mongolia. Due to external factors such as a Chinese border closure, Ukraine's war, and global food and oil price growth, the Mongolian economy will be slowed down. International development institutions forecast much lower than their last forecast for Mongolia. For example, IMF said it will be not 7%, but 1%, according to Mrs. Angana Banerjee, who is from International Monetary Fund. She was on article for visit to Mongolia as a chief for Mongolian mission. I asked several economic questions from her, and here we go. On inflation.
We have now downgraded our growth outlook from 7% to 1%. The outlook is for stagflation, and we expect inflation to also remain quite high. On average, our current forecast is 14.5% for this year, but a lot will also depend on how the government and the central bank conduct policies. So these numbers are not hard and fast. If all these risks mitigate, and we don't know when they will, Mongolia's medium-term growth potential is still strong, 6%. It's just that at this point it's very hard to know when they can reap that potential, because right now the factors that are getting in the way of them reaching high growth is outside their control.
How about IPO of commercial banks planned to be done by July 1st of this year? There was a special law providing that requirements.
First of all, we think the banking reform strategy is a really good idea. Mm-hmm. Our only concern was this law was passed in early 2020, right at the beginning of the pandemic, and the time frame and the ambition of the law was maybe a little too ambitious for the institutional structures and the conditions of Mongolia. The other thing that we were concerned about is during the 2 years of the pandemic, there were many forbearance measures that were adopted, and it's not clear to us how they have affected the bank balance sheets. Uh-huh. Our advice now is, first of all, it would be great if the Parliament delays the IPO deadline and doesn't force it in a way that is now in the current law. The second thing is the central bank should do the AQR, because even if the launch of the IPO is small, because all banks will do small amounts probably, by 2023 a lot of shares have to be issued in order for the shareholder diversification to take place in line with the law. So a lot of issuance is still to come. So the central bank needs to get its act together and do the AQR.
The next question was about tax reform.
One area where we have been pushing for many years is progressive taxation, meaning higher income people pay more than lower income people. Mm-hmm. And to give you an example, on average in emerging markets, a personal income tax is about 27%. In Mongolia, it's 10%. So for all the spending that is demanded of the government, the amount of revenue the rich people contribute, who are the same that gets the maximum benefit from all the child money program, it's inherently unfair. So we want, and we are very happy to hear that this may be an issue that the government is now going to be willing to tackle. And to introduce progressive income taxation, because Mongolia's and we are going to help the government design it well. Now, they also asked us for assistance on how to design a law in a taxation system that would help with the decentralization. Our experts in our fiscal department at the IMF are going to study it and give them some assistance.
How about this price stabilization program suggested by this government recently?
In fact, we are very pleased that with all the oil price and energy price increases, they've allowed energy prices in Mongolia to reflect market prices. And we think it's a better way to do it, because when energy prices reflect real prices, then for those who can manage, at least they can conserve energy use. So
and
in the end,
plan better.
Plan better. So subsidizing prices is not recommended because it is usually very hard to take away. My own country, they had it for really many years, and it was very difficult to remove.
There was an anti-pandemic law of Mongolia, and your organization suggested last year that let this anti-pandemic law expire at the end of 2021 and provide direct support to the banking system. It was proposed even before this Ukraine war started. So what happened and why?
Our concern about this law is twofold.
Mm-hmm.
One part of it is that some of the measures in this law affect the central bank's ability to control inflation. Mm-hmm. Because some of these measures, instead of going through the government's budget, are parked in the central bank's budget. And we think this is not a good idea, no matter what the economic situation is, because the central bank needs to have all the freedom to influence inflation and its independence.
Great.
The second concern we have is a number of these measures, including measures that are provided through the budget to support the economy, are necessary, but they're untargeted. Mm-hmm. So we really think the government has done the right thing in moving very early to support the vulnerable and the ones who are feeling the economic hardship. But the program designs, including some of the safety net designs that are financed by the budget, as well as all the programs that are in the anti-pandemic law, they don't discriminate between those who need the money, like the vulnerable, and those who can afford to pay their own mortgages. They don't need a subsidy. The rich don't need a mortgage subsidy, not even during the pandemic.
So these are the IMF view on current economic situation in the country. Hopefully Mongolia will not be again in the IMF rescue plan the 8th times, because it was already 7 times before. Our second topic is digital signature is in, and it is a part of Nation Digital Transformation Program. In 2020, the government announced its 5-year plan to build a digital nation. From the last week, Mongolia started to implement e-transition laws. There are 5 laws. First, the law on information transparency. Second, the law on protection of personal information. Third law is about law on virtual asset service providers. The fourth was the first law on cybersecurity, and the law on e-signature, the 5th. So we will more now make accent on this law. Why? Because this law had been implemented with a lot of announcements in the country. And since May 2nd, the State General Legislation State Authority are starting to provide e-signature to Mongolian citizens free of charge. So what will happen when the citizens have this signature? Each signature will be valid, effective for next 5 years, and it is issued to each Mongolian citizen above 16 years old. With the population of 3.4 million, we have 2.5 million people above 16 years of age. So electronic signature, also it's called digital signature. They have several final terms to be completed. So this e-signature allows people to acquire public services remotely, such as taking loans and accessing public services on e-Mongolia system. E-Mongolia is a system where the over 600 government services are already included, and they are online. They are available on Mongolian citizens' cell phone. What basically this e-signature suggests that a citizen can self-identify in the virtual world, and to also no need to come in person to any public offices. Public offices will not require any information about you, the data they have in their own database. If personal data is accessed by private and public entities without the consent of that person, that information will appear on e-Mongolia app in statement menu. So basically, you will know who are using your personal information, which is a great adventure that people are they were looking for, because people are worried about safety of their own personal data. Soon, each person will have PID, personal identification number, a kind of social security or taxpayer number in the US, and these numbers will be on your current ID, and it will be installed into your SIM of your phone. Of course, e-signature makes a lot of services better, and it is a good infrastructure for a lot of public services, and that is to be still built for this e-signature. There should be a lot of work to be done. Our third topic will be about the World Press Freedom Index. According to the 2022 World Press Freedom Index, Mongolia is ranked 19th out of 180 countries, exactly and half of it. It is unfortunately 22 countries down from last year, where we ranked last year 68th. Why? Well, this report is made by Reporters Without Borders. It is an international non-profit organization, and according to this organization, the reason why Mongolia is ranking so low this time, even 22 countries back, Mongolian laws and regulations really lack basic legal protection for the confidentiality of sources. First, also, Mongolia has this defamation laws that encourage abusive lawsuits against journalists. So let's go a little bit in details on that. In Mongolia, more than half of all defamation cases are brought against journalists and media outlets based on research for court's decisions for last 22 years. Mongolian laws really provides very harsh penalties for them to censor themselves, and for journalists to censor themselves and hinder independence in investigative media. Many of these lawsuits are from usually very high-ranking officials, parliament members, political officials, civil servants, and government agencies. This pressure from politicians limit media responsibility as a watchdog. Mongolian media ownership lacks transparency. There are 512 media outlets in Mongolia, which is amazingly high for a population of 3.4 million people. The reason is media owners use media not as a media, just as a tool to articulate their own political interests. And the people don't know who exactly the final owner of those outlets. The problem is still many high-ranking politicians, including former president and former prime minister also, have owned strong media outlets through which they just promote their own interests, closing down the pluralistic opinions of Mongolians. Also, one of the other reasons why there are so many outlets is also journalists paid very low, and though they are working very hard, because this very low page, at times they do content that unfortunately damage public trust in the media. Mongolia celebrated World Press Freedom Day on May 3, as many other countries since 1993. And this time we had Independent Journalism National Forum 2022, and it was held in Ulaanbaatar and attended by almost 500 journalists. Traditional media and social media are converging today and creating a lot of challenges and opportunities for journalists. And that convergence also creates government pressure, influence more using social media. And according to journalists' discussions, one sensation made by a journalist is hit by another organized sensation by trolls and bots all around the world. Mongolian Websites Union says that Mongolia has 2.7 million Facebook users and 700,000 users on Instagram. So it shows how much this small country, is digitally, social media activated. In Mongolia, many government actions, government documents become somehow very confidential. It has a special stamp. And if journalists disclose this information, they have even harsher penalties. That's one of the reasons why media freedom is going down in this country. So anyway, we in Mongolia, like many other nations in the world, we are kind of people, we live in a digital blockade. So this includes our de facto review of this week. Hopefully it helped you to understand more what happened in this country. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next week at this time.